sometimes the Torah is asking us, in order to understand something, we have to stretch our minds into a different realm of understanding. That's the beauty of the Torah. It's not telling us something that when it passes through us and we experience learning, that we should end up being the same people at the end of the learning experience as we are at the beginning of the learning experience. That's what it means to learn Torah. That's the matter of fact, the Gemara says that there was one of the great teachers. His name was Rabbah, and he used to begin every one of his lessons. I'm not going to follow that order tonight. He used to begin every lesson with a milsa de bichusa, with a joke. And the question is, why did he begin every lesson with a joke? He's a comedian or something like that. That was his intent. And the answer is that there's a certain quality to a joke that it forces somebody to stretch their mind and to be ready to accept. It's like exercising before a person goes out to do, whatever, to play a sport, to play tennis, football, basketball, you name it. So they're advised and cautioned to do a little stretching. Once you get the muscles toned up and you stretch a little bit this way, because those are the muscles that you're going to be using, those are the movements that you're going to be doing. But you just don't, get out of the car and just start to run in a sprint. You do some limbering up. So Rabbah also understood that the mind has to be made limber, and we have to be ready to open up our brains to gain a new perspective. So what's a joke? What is a joke? A joke, if you analyze the Hebrew words sachok, laughter, so we'll see where it's used, how it's used, and also what it means. The essential word schok is really made up of, you want to analyze the Hebrew language, the Hebrew letter schok stands, the first letter, sin, the first time a letter is used in Chumash, sin, shin, it's used, that's an indicator of what the meaning of that letter means. Therefore, sin, shin, right, is used in the first word, Bereshis bara Elokim et ha-shamayim, right? Es ha-shamayim. Shamayim means heaven. So the first time we find the word shin is used in reference to the heaven. If you now take the second word of schok and you separate it out, there's a word chok. So it really helps us define what is a joke and how to build a joke. A joke is made of heaven and the word chok. Right? So a chok is something that a person is traveling, let's say, and observing something in a certain carved out ordinary path, and suddenly we get a heavenly perspective, we get a different perspective on what's going on. Rav Hirsch points out that when Klal Yisrael came out of Mitzrayim, one of the first things that happened when they got pressed up against the sea, he points out this is the first real good joke in the Torah. He says this is Jewish humor. There's such a thing called Jewish humor. And what's Jewish humor? He says because when they saw the Mitzrayim were coming upon them, and then the water was on the other side, they turned to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, "Hamebli kvarim b'Mitzrayim." There weren't enough graves in Egypt. That's how we get it. Now we understand. They're trying to put an incomplete picture together, right? That's part of a good joke, is to try to create an incomplete picture and put a grasp on the totality of reality with only a few little pieces of threads of information. So what do they need? So the Gemara says that they needed a miracle. That's what they needed. And at that point, the sea split. And it says, Az Yashir, then the sea split, and their mouths. And the Talmud says that it's forbidden for a person to open his mouth completely in laughter in this world, because the Pasuk says, Az Yamale Schok Pinu, then, Az, the same Az, in the future, our mouths will be filled with laughter. The second chapter of Tehillim actually speaks about the days in the future when the coming of Mashiach, and it says, Hayoshev b'shamayim yischok, the one who sits in heaven, he will laugh. What is a good joke? A good joke is, you're watching something in a certain pedestrian path, and all of a sudden your mind opens up. I remember one of my boys told me that there was a fella, a young boy, he was reaching up, a little boy, he's reaching up and he's trying to touch and ring the doorbell at this nice suburban house. He's trying to jump, and he's coming about 6 or 7 inches short, and he just can't reach that doorbell. And an elderly fella like myself, comes ambulating along, right? And suddenly he sees this little boy over there, down the walkway, and he can't reach the fence. Hey, I'm going to help him. He opens up the picket fence, and he hobbles over to the place where this boy is trying desperately to reach that doorbell, and he reaches way over his head, bing, bong. And he says to the little boy, now what? The boy says, now we run like anything. So we're watching it from a certain angle over here, and suddenly we understand what the kavanah of the boy is, and the picture changes. When the sea split, so Klal Yisrael, suddenly their mind opened up, and they realized they're missing a piece of information. What was the piece of information that they're missing? They're missing that there's Hashem. Okay? That's what it's all about. There's a famous story that Groucho Marx, and we'll understand the relevance of this as we continue. We wade into the Parsha a little bit. That Groucho Marx, that famous philosopher, Groucho, right? Not Carl Groucho, but Carl was, forget about him. So he I'm sure the young people here probably never heard of it. Okay, I apologize. I remember going to a wedding one time. It was like, must have been about 600 or 700 people there. All the biggest beards. I'm telling you, like it was massive. It was a very popular, very well established family. And one of the sons did a little bumping around, and he ended up, Baruch Hashem, he came back, he got married, and I'm sitting there at the chuppah, my wife on the ladies' side, and I'm on the men's side, and suddenly I hear the song that they're playing as the fellow's walking to chuppah. It sounds like a nice. And suddenly I said, where have I heard that before? Na 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 na. Nine, 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 yeah, I don't know. Imagine by John Lennon. So it's a nice chuppah song, but I'm sure Ruba 95% of the people didn't know what it was. Suddenly I'm sitting there going like I'm saying, I recognize that. I picked up my head and I said, and I see 20 or 30 other people, their heads are up and they're like looking, and we look at each other. Oh. Those people who had the recognition, So Groucho, he wanted to show off his friend wanted to show off his mansion, so he invited Groucho in California. I want to show you this big mansion, and he threw open the blue room and the green room and the pool room and all the different well decorated, well furnished, architectural, beautiful rooms. And Groucho had this sardonic smile on his face, and a cigar, forever in his mouth. And he remained eminently unimpressed. And the fellow was desperate. He wanted to show off because he wanted to get that, aha reaction, and he wasn't getting it. So he says, listen, the three most important things in real estate, three most important factors are location, location, location. He throws open the back bay doors. And he says, even if you don't like the house, he says, look where I parked myself. He says, I've got, there it was, 20 feet away from the back bay doors was the Pacific Ocean lapping, coming up against and dropping its gentle waves on his backyard. He says, I've got the Pacific Ocean right here in my backyard. There it is, the magnificent view of the endless view of the ocean, unencumbered view. And Groucho gives a tap on his cigar and drops an ash and says, take away the ocean and what have you got? I remember when I was in yeshiva, we were trying to explain, we wanted to get excited to bring our friends, to yeshiva. A bunch of us would come, we said, let's make a movie. Now it was back in the days, camcorders, we could, we'll edit, we'll make a nice movie. And then we try to think, so what are we going to make a movie of? We couldn't think of anything that you can make a movie of, because what are you going to show? A bunch of guys chuckling, swinging their thumbs? What are you going to show? If you take away Hashem, what have you got? They think, what are you doing? But if you include Hashem, then you got something over there. Then you've got something to show for yourself. So if you take that important equation, no one's going to take away the ocean. Maybe in California, okay. But you can't take Hashem out of the equation. David HaMelech says, "Kir v'selokim litov." Right, the most valuable thing to me is being close to Hashem. Location, location, location. Where do I get my self-esteem from? My self-esteem comes from the fact that I have a near relationship to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Doesn't mean he's very tall. You happen not to have been a particularly tall person. I said the Chafetz Chaim. I don't think Rav Moshe Feinstein. I saw him Zecher Tzaddik Levracha. Al Gadol B'Yisrael. I don't think his head was taller than this Stender over here. And they said that the Chafetz Chaim was a head shorter than him. So we're not talking about height. We're not talking about being able to hover over the basket and to slam dunk. But the idea of just feeling and having a closeness to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So again, we come back to Chumash. Why did Rava tell a chiddush a joke, a schok? Because people come in from the street, they come in from their regular lives, and they want to hear Shir Torah. And he says, get ready to hear that their new information is going to come from a different direction. That, Az Yamale Schok Pinu, Az Yasher. Then our eyes are open when we're ready to include the grandest and the biggest factors in the equation of life. And therefore it says over here, in this week's Parsha, the very simple thing, lighting the menorah. Nothing could be simpler than lighting the menorah. The whole construction of the Mishkan was miraculous, and now Aaron is invited to come and light the menorah. We could say, big deal. Aaron lit the menorah, right? My kids would come home with songs. Aaron HaKohen lit the menorah. Mommy lights the menorah. We light Hanukkah candles also. Big deal. It's not a big. You don't have to be a talented person in order to light the menorah. And then the Chumash tells us, "V'yas kein Aharon," and Aaron did so. Now, if Hashem told us to do anything, to tie our shoe or something like that, to jump up on one foot, and to do something that we were able to do, I don't think any of us would hold back for 1 second if we knew that it was Hashem Himself, the Chvodu V'atzma, was telling us to do something, and we had perfect clarity that that's what we had to do. I don't think any of us would hold back a second from doing it. So Aaron was told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to light the menorah, and it says in the pasuk that he lit it, and he did as Hashem told him to do. Very nice. V'yas kein Aaron. Aaron did that. Didn't even say that Hashem. He did, and Aaron did so. So the famous question that's asked is, so what's the great accomplishment that Rashi says over here? Why do you have to tell us that that the pasuk says, and he did it? Of course he did it. Why would he not do it? And he says, Lahagid shivcha shel Aaron, to tell us the great praise of Aaron. This is great praise. Rashi says, Shelo Shina, that he didn't change. But he told him to light the menorah, and then he went and he lit a cigar. Well, Hashem light the menorah. He lit the menorah. He didn't change. Of course he did as Hashem told him to do. What's the great praise of Aaron that he did, that he chose to do exactly as Hashem told him to do? What's Rashi intending over here? Sfas Emes has a very, very beautiful and interesting approach. And he says like this, V'yas kein Aaron. We know that Aaron was told to do this, and it lasted for the next 39 years in the Midbar. That he was the one that was in charge of lighting the menorah. And he says that that's how he did it for the next 40 years. That's how he did it. The great praise of Aaron, that the exact enthusiasm that he did it when he did it the first time. You imagine a yeshiva boy, a bar mitzvah boy, putting on those tefillin for the first time. I took my sons, when they got bar mitzvah, I took them to the Western Wall for the first time, each one of them, 30 days before the bar mitzvah, and that's where we put on the tefillin. Can you imagine? Vayelchu shnehem yachdav, Abba and son, father and son going together, and we bought a tefillin bag. We picked up our tefillin that was constructed and organized in Eretz Yisrael, and then we got up at Vasikin each time, and we made our way to the Kosel, and there they put on their tefillin, and it's all wrapped in the same bag, in the same tefillin bag, and that's what they put on every day for the rest of their life. I was intending and I was hoping to plant a memory that they would never forget, but nothing's going to compare with that initial excitement that they had. The great praise of Aaron was that the excitement that he had the first time that he did it, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to do it, didn't tell him to do it every time. He continued with that same enthusiasm and that same excitement for the next 39 years. Wow. That's the praise of Aaron. And really, that's the challenge of the beginning of this week's Parsha. We also find the end of last week's Parsha that the Nesiim all brought the same korban. And the pasuk tells us, and then they all brought the same thing. I went to a bar mitzvah. The poor bar mitzvah boy was out of breath by the end. It was the largest parsha, 176 pasukim, and they could have said that this one brought, and then everybody else brought the same thing, and so did the others, and they could have saved a lot of ink. But they all brought the same exact jot and diddle size and quantity and everything. They all brought the same, and the pasuk goes and spells us the exact same thing. So one of the rebbes in our yeshiva, he asked the kids this question. He said, what's the big deal? That they all brought the same thing. The truth is, I was thinking, that is probably the greatest miracle that ever happened. That everybody was machavin that should come up with the same thing. If we all say, let's all come up with a poem, Nancy, let's all come up with a poem for, to say, let's say, to say hello to Rabbi Wallerstein at his birthday or something, I don't know what, and we all write the same poem. Everybody writes it. We all come up with the same exact words. What are the chances? There's millions of words. There's 88 keys on the piano. How many different types of music can you make? Right? They have all the options in the world. They have so many materials and instruments that are available to them. And this, they all brought, and they all decided to bring the same thing. How did such a thing happen like that? If you have 613 keys, then how many different types of music can you make? So the fact that they all came up with the same thing is quite miraculous. But still, the Torah spells it out, and spells it out, and spells it out, and spells it out. So this Rebbe said to the students, he says, we say the same Shemona Esrei every day. And we hear the same Parsha every week, every year. We go through the same cycle. Comes back to Pesach again. The Megillah, been there, done that. Right? I saw a cartoon in a book I have at home of Reader's Digest cartoons. Nice, clean jokes. They got an old couple sitting over there, wearing the sweatshirt, waiting for the light to turn green, and one sweatshirt reads, been there, and the other one reads, done that. You know? You know? Same old, same old. What do you want? You know? So, we heard it already. And people say, heard it already. So the question is, how do you get excitement out of the same stuff? That's what the Torah is challenging us. So how do you do it?
So what's the answer?
Okay, and that's where we conclude the share tonight. Okay, now. Good night. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, let's at least try to think about it. There's a famous story that the Satmar Rebbe was at a wedding, and the Batchen, the comedian, wanted to, entertain the bride and groom. That's the main point of the coming to the wedding. And this fellow asked the Satmar Rebbe, can I imitate you? Do we have control over the air conditioning over here, or just fixed? Okay, good. So they asked the Satmar Rebbe if he can imitate him. The Satmar Rebbe was a self-effacing person. He had no ego. He said, no, fine, go ahead, please, go ahead. And the fellow started doing an impersonation of the way the Satmar Rebbe davens on Yom Noraim. Booty, ooty, ooey, whatever. And everybody was all upon him. They were laughing. They couldn't hold themselves. And the Batchen saw that people felt the people are laughing. He's getting to them. And he took a look over, a glance to see what's the Rebbe's reaction. Crying. The fellow was mortified. He went running over to the Rebbe right away, and he says, please, Rebbe, please, I beg forgiveness. I didn't mean to offend the Rebbe. People were laughing, but at the Rebbe's expense. The Rebbe says, no, you asked me permission. You certainly had perfectly, it was okay for you to make. He says, everybody was laughing. He says, then why was the Rebbe crying? He says, when I heard how you imitated me so perfectly, like the way I sound in Yom Noraim, he says, I thought for a moment, he says, maybe I'm just an imitation of myself also. There's something inauthentic. There's something unreal. The first time I gave the shekel, as a matter of fact, when we take the lulav and esrog, which really represents after Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and all the days of avoda and tshuva, that we renewed ourselves. Leif tahor barali elokim, a new heart. I just got a new heart operation. I got a new heart. I just got a heart transplant. I have a new heart that's dedicated to Hashem. So we take an esrog, and we take a lulav that represents the spine, and we take the eyes, the hadassim, and we take the lips that represent. I have a new mouth. The old one that was speaking lashon hara, I slammed it down with the ravas, and now I got a new mouth. So we take this, and it says. You have to take, it's a new day, and you have to take a brand new, you're coming with a new heart, the new eyes, a new dedication, new devotion. So the Mishnah in Sukkos tells us in the third parak, says lulav hagazel v'hayavesh pasel. Goes through a whole few different things. What makes a lulav and what's making esrog pasel? And it says lulav hagazel v'hayavesh. If it's stolen, if it's dried. Which means, if you're doing it, I come into the room, I see everybody shuckling. Okay, that's how I do it. That's how you do it. Now, I'm just shuckling because everybody else shuckles. It's inauthentic. That's puzzle. That's what I'm saying. It's something, the avoda, if I'm just doing it because, or if it's yavish, it's old. I'm doing it because that's the way I've been doing it for years. I get that's my dance. That's how I do it. The first time I did it, maybe it was authentic. The second time, maybe I'm just an imitation of myself. I'm not saying it always is. Sometimes tenuas achitzonius mereres is a panemius. The person has to do it from the outside in order to get into the mood to wake up the inside. But if it never penetrates and never wake up at the inside, so maybe I'm just an imitation of myself. That's what the Rebbe had detected. The Mishnah goes through a whole bunch of other things that describe also that when a lulav, when an esrog that represents a new type of avoda is puzzle. So the premise is that the person does something, it has to intersect, or it's worthwhile to try somehow to intersect that our avoda, that our work, whatever it is that we're doing, should somehow have some life to it. There's a beautiful Mishnah in the 6th parak of, listen to this, in the 6th parak of Perek Avos, which is actually Parak Kinyan Torah, which is actually a brisa, and it says the following thing. It's a very odd Mishnah. It's very hard to swallow. It needs an explanation. Kachi darcha shel Torah. This is the way of Torah, right? It's going to sound familiar to some people. Pasba melech. You're going to eat bread with salt. Tochel, that's what you should eat. Mayim b'meshura tishta, a measure of water. V'ala aretz tishan, sleep on the earth. It's describing an austere existence. V'chai tzar tichya, you live a life of depriving and pain and difficulty. U'b'torah ata omel, and you'll toil in Torah. Right? It sounds like, hey, very inviting. V'im ata osakein, and if you're going to do it, so the Mishnah says the following: if you're going to do it, ashrecha v'tovlach, happy will you be v'tovlach. Huh? Now you know what I'm talking about over here when I said, take away the ocean. What have you got? Hey, listen, it doesn't sound too pleasant, right? Anybody going to buy that? I want to marry a learning boy. Okay, I understand that's what you're selling over here. It's not so easy to sell. So Reb Simcha Zisel, the Alter from Kelm, says the following thing. He says, "What do you mean? That's the way of Torah. Are we supposed to have a life of deprivation? Is that the prescription? Is that required by everybody? That we have to take a vow of poverty?" I told my wife I didn't take a vow of poverty. It just turned out that way. That's all. It wasn't. I promise you, it wasn't a vow. But what's and he says, and we understand the Mishnah promises Asher Tovlach. Happy you'll be in Tovlach, good in the next world. So we can say Tovlach in Olam Haba. This is Simcha Zisel's question. But Ashrecha b'Olam Hazeh, you'll be happy in this world. Ashrecha b'Tovlach. Ashrecha, happy in this world, and good for you in the next world. Good for you in the next world, we understand. Maybe. Happy in this world, what does it mean? Stuck question, right? Then you learn that Mishnah. It's not so easy to swallow. So he said like this: when you read over the Mishnah, my son taught me, he says, whenever you read over the Mishnah, you'll find the answer in the Mishnah itself. For Simcha Zisel says, read over the Mishnah again, read it again, read it again. The answer's there. And the answer says, in the pasuk says, in the Mishnah says, Imata osachein, if you're the one who's doing it, then ashrecha v'tovlach. If you're looking in the window and you're just an observer and you're what do they call a spectator, then you're not going to get it. We'll go to Eretz Israel and we'll come into Meir Sharim and we'll walk through the dusty streets and we'll peek into a window and we'll see this room where there's somebody sitting there with some dark tea, and he's got some black bread, a little bag with some with a few crumbs of bread, and he's got his Gemara open, and it's a hot day, and his jacket is hanging next to him, and he's schwitzing in that room, and there's just maybe one fan overhead, and he's hacking away, and he's spending the whole morning learning, trying to understand the Tosfos, trying to understand something. He's fulfilling this mission over here. And he said, Nebuch, look at this guy. Let's do an intervention, right? Two guys from California that just came. He said, let's pick him up. Let's take him, on a Make-A-Wish trip, and we'll bring him to Hollywood, it's on the hill over there, Hollywood, and we'll put a Hawaiian lei around his neck, and we'll take him out to a movie, and we'll introduce him to the stars, and leave him alone. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. What are you doing? Leave the guy alone. He doesn't need that. Because from the outside you look like Nebuch. What is this guy? We have to help him. But from the inside, he's having a tam chaim. He's having an experience from within that the person from the outside could never possibly detect in 100 years or 1,000 years. It's showing us the power of Torah, the koich of Torah, that even if the person has an austere condition on the outside, if the inner world, if the light on the inside is connected and the person is doing his thing, then all those other things fall away. I remember having an discussion with a friend of mine, an all-time chavrusa, someone, whenever I come to Eretz Yisrael, even if I haven't been there for years, as soon as I arrive, Ruvain, I'm here. Okay, Rabbi Label, I'll meet you tomorrow, 5 o'clock in the Beit Medrash. Boom, we're always learning together. Kesher Elyon Deraisa. The top knot and the tzitzit that's the Torah knot. The other windings and knots are the Rabbanan. That's what the Gemara in Chulin says. But a friend of mine once told me Kesher Elyon, someone I learned in yeshiva with, he told me at a reunion, he says Kesher Elyon Deraisa. The top connection between people is Deraisa. When you want to meet with people, not the people you went bowling with and you shared sushi with, but the people that you learn Torah with, they become your friends forever. So here he told us, Kesher Elyon Deraisa. We learn together, we're connected. So he's a friend that we learned together many years, and as soon as I arrive, we pick up the friendship where we left off. It's almost like the conversation begins, and we go right back to the Gemara. So I'm sitting there early in the morning, jet lag compounded by early, rising, and I need toothpicks to keep my eyes open. I tell him, I said, Reuven, I don't know how the Vilna Gaon did it. He said, he says to me, you don't know how the Vilna Gaon did what? I said, on 2 hours sleep. He got away with 4 1/2-hour sleeping episodes throughout every day for his adult life. Right? And how he did it, 2 hours sleep. He says, it's not true. I said, I don't know, beg to differ, Reuven. But I saw an authenticated biography that the Vilna Gaon only slept 2 hours a day in a 24-hour period. He says, it's not true. I said, you want to argue with the facts? I said, I saw that the Vilna Gaon only slept 2 hours a day. I don't know how he did it. He said, it's not true. He said, Rabbi Label, he says, he learned Torah 22 hours a day. It wasn't that he was into sleep deprivation. Like I'm sitting over saying, how do I keep my eyes open? When a person is feeling sleep deprived, so it's an amazing thing that if a person's eating ice cream, they're not going to feel sleep deprived. Let's say you have to take a long distance trip. One of the proven strategies if you want to stay awake is, get a can of soda. Nobody ever fell asleep while they were drinking soda, right? Nobody ever fell asleep while they were eating an ice cream cone. You could suddenly produce an ice cream cone for a long trip. Nobody ever fell asleep. Maybe while they were learning Mishnayos. That's why the Kutzker Rebbe said he never wrote his Svarim. He never wrote his Chedushim down. He said, why not? He said he didn't want to sleep with his Chassidim because he knows that on Shabbos afternoon they're suddenly going to melt into the, especially after a bowl of chont. The Surgeon General had warned, don't operate any heavy machinery. That's why Baruch Hashem it's on Shabbos. That is dangerous. You're going to sleep with the Rebbe. Can't do such a thing. But he had the tanuk, he had the enjoyment. If you're the one that's doing it, from the inside, so then take away the ocean, and what have you got? So it's keeping him awake. Another proven strategy, by the way, since we're on the subject, is you hold a $100 bill outside the window or a $20 bill outside the window with your 2 fingers. That's it. That will keep you awake. There won't be any drowsing that's going on there because nobody wants to let go of the $100. You have to incentivize yourself. Okay, that was off our subject. So the Mishnah is saying over here that if a person's having the inner experience, it cancels out and it negates and it eclipses whatever is going on the outside. Now how? We asked before. Let's maybe take a couple extra little hints over here. I once saw, actually, the hint is given in the Geras Ramban. In the very end over there, and other places also, they write an incredible tip for when somebody wants to daven and have an incredible davening experience. And it's very simple, but it takes a lot of patience. And that is, point and look at the word that you're about to say before you say it. Instead of davening by looking in the rearview mirror and thinking as I'm saying it, what did I just say? What was the parish of that word that I just said? What was the parish? You understand what I'm saying? You slow it down a step, and you have in mind to say this word before you say it. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, and you have in mind what each word means. Baruch, that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is the source of bracha. Atah, you, Nokach Pnei Hashem. Elokeinu, our God, personal God. Melech, Melech, Ha'olam, this hidden world that Hashem is not available. So now suddenly Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hu Haya, Hu Hoveh, Hu Yiyeh, Hu Mahaves Hakol. He was, he is, he will be, and he brings everything into being. Okay, Elokeinu, Bal Koiches Kulam. Have intention to understand what the word. But if you're pointing at him, understand what it means. Before you say it, it lights up the davening. It changes it into something else. Okay, why don't we do it? So it's not so easy. It requires a lot of time and patience to do it, but it's a game changer. They say there was a fella, he came to his rabbi one time, and he said, Rabbi, I don't know what's going on. I'm not getting along with my wife. It's not happening. I don't know. I'm not getting smiles. She's scowling at me. I can't find grace in her eyes. I don't know what I did or what I'm not doing. Rabbi says, do you ever get any flowers on Erev Shabbos or anything like that? He says, no. He says, why don't we start there? Get her flowers. He said, I never heard about that. Never taught us that in the Gemara and the Yeshivas. Get her flowers. A woman's not going to refuse flowers. He goes, that's it? I go out and say flowers? He said, no. He said, when you get flowers, he says, write a note. Write a note. He says, what should I write in the note? He said, I find myself sometimes having to coach, fellas also. That was the only advice I gave to my boys before they got married. If they didn't see in anything, I have nothing to teach them anymore, But I told them, when you give a gift, yichud, or whatever it is, birthday, anniversary, write a note. The note is the neshama of the gift. Right? Just don't give a gift. Write a note. So he said, same thing, write a note. What should I give? I am the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Me and Lou Gehrig, whatever it is. Okay. Remember that famous speech? Can you believe he died of Lou Gehrig's disease? What is the chance a person going to die of his own disease? Okay, this is also very not likely to happen. Very unusual. Okay, so you write something nice, write special, write something. Sometimes I find myself playing Cyrano de Bergerac and giving advice about what might sound. But you got to now own it. Once you say it, pick one of the 3, 5, and take possession. So this rabbi gave advice what to write. He writes a nice note, and he comes home. He delivers with a bouquet of flowers. Hands it to her. Takes, out the note, and he says, the rabbi said I should say that you are the, oh my gosh, like fool, So the same thing. A person comes to daven, and they open up the siddur, and they say, and the Anshe Knesset Hagadola says I should say Baruch Atah Hashem before I eat this fruit. Like I'm saying, like what does it say? I should say, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu. The person's not there. Even though it was written by the Anshe Knesset Hagadola, even though the rabbi gave him the script, but say it as if it's you that's saying it, and therefore think before every word, and then it would have been more accepted. You can imagine the flowers came on top of the head after that. It didn't have the same warmth and the same reception as if he himself was the one that was saying it, as if it was being composed right now and it was rolling off of his tongue. So just pointing and looking at the words before and having intention before we're saying them can have a tremendous effect and a tremendous impact like that. So here's another, I think, a very great idea. It's also not so easy to do, and it requires doing nothing. Okay, and I tell you the truth that for many, many years I practiced this. It's not so easy. I have to get back in, and I go for months and months at a time where I just, that's it. I get fed up, and I go back to this mode over here, and I really do believe that if over the years I had the chutzpah or the privilege and the schus to speak to different audiences and to open my mouth. I was not the biggest learner in the yeshiva. There were a lot of guys who were a lot swinging their thumb and a lot. But I don't know. I think it came during a certain period of time that a close friend of mine, who also now lives in Eretz Yisrael, that it was during the Gulf War, and a friend of us, a close rabbi of ours, had given us this piece of advice that, what do you need the news for? What do you need the news? He just planted this idea very strongly and planted this. What do you need the news for? What's with the news? News. It's news. Shlomo Melech already said, Ein kol chadash tachas hashemesh, right? And Kehelis. Shlomo Melech was the wisest of all men. He told us there's no news. Isn't it unbelievable? There's no news. And yet we're all fascinated with news. It was during the second Gulf War. The first Gulf War. The Gulf War Rishon, 21 years ago. Okay? Look around, there's a few people that were probably before they were born over here. And there's a few people that were probably, young adults when that was going on. They have a memory. Remember the Gulf War Rishon? And they had videos on the bombs themselves. You could see this one going and explode, right? There were all these different things, and everybody was yapping about it, and everybody got on a bus to come to New York at that time, and they had their radios, and they were listening what's happening next, and what happened, what's going on. It was a war, and it was a televised. There was never such a well covered. It was so detailed with everybody watching every detail. And we decided at that time, my friend Ephraim and I, we're going to go submarine silent. If there's something we need to know, if you have to go into a bomb shelter or follow people, where are you going to go? But everybody was talking, and we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to listen to it, and we shut off the radios during that time. And life started to take on new color and new meaning for us. The learning suddenly lit up, and we felt that we gained an advantage for ourselves, not in comparison to anybody else, but he gained an advantage, and I gained an advantage that gave us feet for the next 27, 28 years. For the next 20 some odd years. What was the advantage? So we were even trying to maybe talk to a few other people and to try to understand what was the accomplishment of what we're doing. Since everybody has such a taiva for it, we decided that there must be something, there's an advantage in not participating in it. Then we said, why do people want news? And what's the value of it? Shlomo Melech already said, we said before, Ein kol chadash tachas hashemesh. There's nothing new. There's no news. Yeah? If you think about it, every day we go, oh, what happened? Machadash. We open up, find out what's going on. What happened? What's happening? Isn't it unbelievable? And we thought of a business. This guy happened to be a very, very clever businessman, very clever. And he was in the seconds business, like the odd lot type of stuff. He would buy stuff from one place and sell it in another season. I said, I came with an idea. Let's propose, let's present it to real businessmen. And we tried it a few times. We'll take yesterday's newspaper or today's newspaper. We'll sell it tomorrow for half the price. Don't read it today, people. Come get it at Ephraim's newsstand the next day for 10 cents. Over there it's 25 cents or 50 cents. Get it for 40 cents less over here today, and you'll read the newspaper. Read yesterday's newspaper. Don't read today's newspaper. Read yesterday's newspaper. And we talk to business people. We're going to collect all the unread newspapers and all the unsold newspapers, and we'll sell them next. We'll sell them the next day, and the next week even cheaper. What do you think? And we went to business people, and they said, "What are you talking about? Shtuyot. Stupid. What? Why? What's wrong with it? What's wrong?" And they critiqued it. No, who wants to hear? Who wants yesterday's newspaper? You got to pay somebody to haul it away. It's good for wrapping fish, maybe. Yesterday's newspaper. Then we asked, so what's the value of today's newspaper? If it wasn't anything, it's not going to be worth anything tomorrow. Hey, you're right. So what is the value? What is the value? And why do people cherish and go running after the news if the next day you got to pay somebody to take it away from your doorstep? You got to wrap it up and and pile it up, and it may be only good for wrapping fish. I used to take my mother-in-law, Aliyah Shalom, she passed away this past year, to take her to the country. So at the end of the summer, we'd put down on the floor in the bungalow, we'd put down the Daily News or the Post or whatever. We'd put it all over the floor because the little mice are running around, and it made it easier to clean up at the end of the next summer the different things that were collected on the floor there, So I put it down at the end of the summer, and I come back the next summer, almost an entire year later, and she'd label, pick me up the newspaper from the floor. It's interesting. I love this Yiddish context, this Yiddish syntax. Throw me out the window, my slippers. Put me in the blender. A banana, chop me up in pieces, a tomato, oh my God, Mom, until she finished the sentence, we didn't know what she wanted, Oh, okay. Just pick me up from the floor. Ma, you're standing. The newspaper. Okay. So I go and I pick up the newspaper off the floor. And this is what I do to keep myself awake. I hope you don't mind. Okay. and I pick up those, and I go down to Bendo, and I see it's the same kina hataiva v'akoved motzias adam min ha'olam. It's the same. It's a scandal on this one, and a scandal on that one, and that one stuck his hand in the cookie jar and got caught, and that one stuck. It may be the different characters. When my mother used to work in seasonal jobs, and she'd come back to her soap operas, it was always this. Wherever you came back, you didn't miss anything. It's the same stuff that's happening in slow motion. It's the same scandal. It's the same thing. You can collapse it into one Mishnah. So if there's no news, so what's the taiva for news? Because we're crazy? And the answer is no. What's the taiva for news? The taiva for news actually comes from a very, very holy place, and I do believe it's the following. It says, we say it actually two times a day in our davening. And I think this is where the help and siyata d'shmaya that my friend and I, we picked up at that time. We say twice a day in our morning davening. We say a statement from the Anshe Kenes Gadol, the following amazing thing. HaMachadesh b'tuvo b'cho yom tamid ma'aseh bereshis. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with His kindliness, is constantly renewing the creation. We don't care that it's an old world. How old is the world? Rabbi, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a cosmologist. And the Torah is not a book of cosmology. How old is the world? Now. That's what the world is. HaMachadesh b'tuvo b'cho yom tamid ma'aseh bereshis. Histaklu b'raisa, the Zohar says, u'bara alma. The Kodesh Baruch Hu didn't look into the Torah. He's looking into the Torah in creating the world. Remember the old movie theater where the light comes through and you have it onto the screen? The light, the Kodesh Baruch Hu looking into the Torah. He's looking into the blueprint, and there it is, projected up onto the screen over here. And as long as the Kodesh Baruch Hu is looking into it, then it's alive. Kodesh Baruch Hu is reaffirming. If you take a look at most of the brachas that we make throughout the course of a day, I say 99.9, except for maybe Asali Kol Tzarki. I can't think of hardly any others. They're all said in the present tense. Isn't that something? Let's think about it. Borei Pri Ha'etz. I have an apple in front of me. Doesn't mean Bara Pri Ha'etz. It was created. That's the past tense. It was created, and therefore I'm talking about that this came from a tree, that came from a field, that came from a tree, that came from a seed, that came from the tree, that goes all the way back to the tree and the seed from Ma'aseh Bereshis. No. This is being created now. Like the screensaver I have on my phone that shows a picture. Right there it is. Oh no, I'm sorry. Okay, I have a picture of two granddaughters over here. There they are, right? And the screen, the picture is saying, produce this picture, right? As long as the computer is telling to produce this picture, produces the picture. It's a still life. Not a still life, it's still living. If the battery would go down, or the program would say to do something else, it would do something different completely, and the picture would go blank, and it would go back to sohu vavohu, go back to void and nothingness. But Kodesh Baruch Hu stopped taking interest in the world and stopped renewing the world. Therefore, even though ein kol chadash tachas hashemesh, lemala min hashemesh yesh chadash. Beyond the sun there is. So, what is a person looking for when they're looking for that? They're looking for the chiddush of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, who's giving life now, who hativ, who meitiv, who yetiv, and a Kodesh Baruch Hu is giving the life right now. Hazan es olam kolo b'tavo b'chein b'chesed u'rachamim, that is being given, is being delivered fresh right now. That's what the Chovos Levavos says. One of the reasons why a person finds it difficult to recognize the tov and the good of a Kodesh Baruch Hu at any moment in life, he says it's for a very basic and fundamental reason. Not because we're bad. He said we're blinded and we're rocked into a sense of dullness by the predictability that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is doing things constantly. When people ask, Rabbi, you really believed that the Red Sea split? And the answer is, if it happens once, it's a miracle. But our definition of nature is repeating miracles. If it happens constantly, then it becomes it's naseh teva. It becomes natural. If a little baby would be born at the edge of a tree, everybody would be watching that baby. They'd all be charting his growth, and Time and Life magazine would all be following, and you name it. All the different periodicals would all be watching and finding out, is he going to be able to socialize, and will he have the qualities of every other? But if they start popping up on trees all over the place, all throughout North America and South America and Europe and Asia, people would be out there with their machetes, seeing if they can, limit their, how much already, let's cut down these trees before they overpopulate the neighborhood. It's a problem already. We have the tree baby problems, right? If something happens once, so it's very hard for us. We recognize it as a miracle. But if it happens constantly, the word hateva, the natural world, really is Elokim. That's the word for Elokim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is delivering, is creating fresh existence for us constantly. And therefore the Torah prescribed 100 brachas every day. Ma Hashem L'kecha Sholem Mi'imach. It's another pasuk coming on later on in Devarim. What does Hashem asking you? Ki'im liyiras Hashem L'kecha. Except that you should fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean to fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So the Gemara prescribes, let's take that word ma and let's turn it into the word meya. 100 Hashem prescribes from you. That's where we get meya brachas, 100 blessings every day. By the way, my friend and I made up a cartoon. I don't know how to draw a cartoon, but I have the picture in my mind what it would look like. Nobody ever sketched it for me, and I'm not the artist to draw it. But in words, I can describe what it looks like. And the cartoon that we were thinking about that time during the Gulf War looks like the following. Let's just imagine, okay, life is a self-portrait. I spent the first few decades of my life absorbed into baseball. Loved baseball, played baseball. I was a college pitcher. And so I can imagine that the pitcher is on the mound right there at Yankee Stadium. As a matter of fact, someone once told me, a friend of mine told me, he says that when Mashiach comes, so they're going to drop the 2 notches on the last E at Yankee Stadium, it's going to become Yankel Stadium, okay? Okay, so you have the pitcher, and he's looking down to the catcher. He's the one that's ready to receive the pitch, and he usually gives a signal, fastball, slider, curve, you name it. And instead of looking there to see what his next pitch is going to be, his eyes are slightly vaulted, and you have 60,000 people standing there waiting for the pitcher now to take his stance and to throw the ball. And they're all waiting and waiting impatiently. He's getting more and more impatient. But instead of looking there at the person he's going to throw it to, his eye is slightly vaulted, and there's a giant video screen, and the video screen is showing there is the pitcher with 60,000 people watching him, looking at himself, watching 60,000 people looking at him, looking at the screen, looking at 60,000 people looking at the screen, like when you tilt the mirror in the back of your head and you see the back of your head forever, going infinitum, ad infinitum, ad absurdum, yeah? And so the people are watching him, watching himself, watching them, watching him. And the caption reads, spectator sport. Everybody's waiting for him to do something because he's the key player. And he's watching everybody watching him, waiting for him, watching him to do something, but he's watching them, waiting for them. And the whole world was watching and trying to get the attention of the Jewish people. And there were 39 missiles that went flying into Eretz Israel. And we were busy watching what the world is watching us, watching them, instead of doing what we're supposed to be doing. And the world is waiting impatiently for us, for the Jewish people, for waiting for leadership, waiting for some new quality, waiting for some new light to come into the world, and we're busy watching them instead of, and that's the concept of spectator sport. So there's a newness in the world. There's a fresh flow of chiddush, and that's what people are looking for. What do we do about the problem of now? How do we live, not just to live in the present, but to live as life is a present, to live and to seize each moment and to be present in that moment where we have to be living. How does a person do that? How does a person do it? It's a tremendous art. Maybe I'll just suggest one more idea. Besides Me'ah Brachas, slowing down and saying the words, might be good also to take a deep breath every once in a while and just slow time down. We're running ahead, we're falling behind. How come the person's not in the present moment? How come it's very hard to daven? I find it, up until Yom Kippur, on the Eilah sometimes, until I lose myself. We're so busy with our own thoughts. We're so busy, our thoughts are following us around all the time. It's very hard to get rid of them. We can't chase them away, not with force, but except maybe through focusing on something else, or just being cognizant of them and then letting them somehow go away. But one crucial way, one critical way, an important way, is I was thinking the following thing. The Gemara's, there's a Mishnah, outside there's a Medrash, from Parshas Behalotcha that says the following thing. We mentioned the pasuk Ve'ata Yisrael. We only didn't say the first part. And now Israel, Ma Hashem L'kecha Sholem Mi'imach. What does Hashem ask from you? Actually, the pasuk in Bereishis says Ve'ata Pentishalch Es Yado. And now there was a fiery sword that was put by the tree of life because lest man sent his hand. And now, so the Medrash says something interesting. Ein lashon ve'ata el tshuva. There's no expression of ve'ata and now except tshuva. What does that mean? That there's no expression of and now tshuva, and now ve'ata with an ayin. Why is and now tshuva? Why does that tell you tshuva? So I have two tshuvas. I have two answers. One of them, I was thinking the following thing: that why does a person not experience the now? Where is their thoughts? So our thoughts are that we're feeling guilty about the future, right? Or we're feeling guilty about the past. I'm sorry. Or we're feeling we're worried about the future. And so what happens is, if a person, okay, let me start off from the first shot. The first shot I was thinking like this is that sometimes people say, you know when I'm going to turn it on? You know I'm going to press on my on button? You know when I'm going to get really excited? When I'm going to retire. I'm going to go to Israel. I'm going to grow a long beard. I'm going to sit and I'm going to get into an all-day kollel. You know, I remember going to my wife one time telling me, forget about this Parnassa thing. Forget about all this stuff. I said, dear, I'm going to sit in the kollel all day long, and I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to do it. You know, I don't need this. And instead of answering me like, where are we going to get money from? My wife says to me, why don't you start with Sundays? You know. Yeah, big dreams, because someday, right? Someday I'm going to start saying the whole Tehillim every day. Someday I'm going to become. Or there's the old nostalgic, Gwen in the Alterheim back then. Oh, we had Shalashiris. Oh, met the Rebbe, and all the Talmidim. We were there, and we sang into the night, and we learned all night long. And that was in the yeshiva. We stayed up all night long, and we learned. There was a Kabbalah, like it's in the past, and it's in the future. Like someone said, those were the days. My friend, I thought they'd never end. We'd sing and dance forever, right? And it was in the past, or it's in nostalgia, and everybody knows nostalgia is not what it used to be, right? Or it's in the future, someday. And that's when I'm going to go on a diet. And that's when I'm going to stop smoking cigarettes. And that's when I'm going to turn off the radio. And that's when I'm going to do the thing. What are you talking about? When you know when a guy's serious? When he does it now. And now. And now as opposed to the past. And now as opposed to the future. Stop putting it off. And stop, looking with nostalgic retrospect. Now. When the person says, I'm going to do it now. And they get into it and they decide they're going to do something now. That's ein ba'atel tshuva, because it happens. It's something that happens in the now, not something that's going to happen later. Someday I'm going to do it, and next week I'm going to, at the end of Shavuos, my 14th piece of cheesecake, and then I'm going to go on my diet. No. Now when you put the fork into the thing and you waiter, I don't want it anymore. That's it. I'm finished. And now you put that cigarette, you crush it. Say that's it. I'm finished. Take this whole pack, $10. Throw it away. That's it. I'm finished. That's it. Oh, that's serious. When it happens, and now as opposed to the past, and now as opposed to the future. The other one I'm thinking is that the person's feeling guilty about the past, and they're feeling in their mind, where's the mind if it's not in the present? Because we're busy rummaging in our mind saying, he deserved what I said. I should have said something, they deserve it, and because they said it to me, if they would have said, I would have even told the Lord the second time, I would do it again. The past, and in the future, what's going to be? Is he going to get into a good school? Oh, you're going to get a good shidduch. They're going to have a baby. Oh, what's going to be with the baby? They're going to get a good shidduch. They're going to get a good school. Oh, we're going to have enough money. What if I win the lottery? Oh, what do I do with all that money? Oh, I hope I win the lottery. The mind is racing to the future. Why is the person worried about the past? Why is the person worried about the future? Because they're guilty about the past. Let's think about it for a second. I had a friend of mine. He signed documents he shouldn't have signed. He signed his brother's name. He didn't have a job for a couple of months, and he got in with some mortgage guys. And they said, they had an in with a bank who was just giving loans out like that. A guy worked in the bank without double checking the loans. But things were booming, and everything was going to work out fine. Yeah. And the guy said, just sign. This boss told him, didn't touch any papers. He said, just sign your brother's name. Sign everybody's name. Anybody know? Sign it. He's signing names, signing documents, because he wanted to do it. And then the feds showed up and they knocked on this guy's door and they knocked on that guy's door. And had a fragile marriage and trust issues. Oh my gosh. His hair turned gray that year. He went crazy. He went Meshuggah. I sat with him. I nursed him. I sat with him every day. He was crazy. Every time the phone rang. What? Who's there? Don't answer the phone. The family looked at him. His wife looked at him. What's going on? He couldn't tell anybody. He had to retain a lawyer for $50,000 that he didn't have. He had to borrow from somebody. Every time the mail came, he ran out. He was the first one to grab the mail. Don't anybody look at the mail. when the planes hit the towers, and his case was in the basement of Tower 2, and that's when his case ended. Bizarre, but he was, but because he was guilty about what he did, he was always anticipating when the other shoe was going to drop into the future. You hear what I'm saying? So when a person feels guilty about the unreconciled past, so then they're waiting for the knock on the door. What's going to happen? What's going to be? What's going to be? We happen to work in Queens, where they have this street that's called Queens Boulevard, just a few blocks away from the yeshiva. Queens Boulevard is Death Alley. Every year, 25, Rahman al-Islam, 30 people are mowed down there, because the street turns, and they have about 6 or 7 lanes, pedestrian and side traffic and swift, and no matter how they set it up, can you imagine a little kid crossing that street over there? Can you imagine how mortifying, how petrifying to see a little kid crossing that street, or for how a kid feels, or an elderly person, who has to slowly, ambulate across that street? It ain't easy. But can you imagine that little kid now is holding on to his father's hand, right? And every time a bus, whooshes by, or a motorcycle or a truck rumbles, the sidewalk, he's holding on to his father's hands. No problem, ain't baya. The minute his father says, "Oh, let me run a little ahead," he runs a little ahead of his father, or he falls a little bit behind his father. He's out of sync. Now all of a sudden it's lions and tigers and bears.
Like our
oh
God.
My! What?
Hold the hand of God.
Hold the hand, exactly. So the person now comes out of sync. He's out of sync with Hashem, and all of a sudden everything that happens is a potential fright, is a potential scare to him. But the minute he's holding his hand, Tamim Tia, Im Hashem Lokecha. To be Tamim, Rashi said of it, not to look after the futures. That means not to go and say, I'm going to go see a Kabbalist who's going to read my palm and tell me about the future. Will I? Will he? Does it? Forget about it. Tamim Tia Im Hashem Lokecha. To be Im Hashem Lokecha. To be with Hashem. When the person does tshuva, Ein ve'ata el tshuva, the person says, and now, because I did tshuva, so then it's not. I don't have to think. So I don't have to sit and to reconcile my books of the past. I made tshuva, and I don't have to sit. And therefore, I don't have to sit and worry about the future, because I'm sitting over here and I can take step by step. The person can walk and he can be with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So if a person takes a moment, Yafa Sha'achas, the Mishnah in Perkei Avos tells the unbelievable thing. Yafa Sha'achas shel tshuva ma'asim tovim ba'olam hazeh mikol chayalim haba. One moment of tshuva and ma'asim tovim in this world is greater than the whole olam haba. And yet the Mishnah tells us that all the pleasures that are in this world, don't add up from the beginning of time, Rav Dessler says, until the end of time. If you collapse all that into one pill and get one whiff, one sniff of the ecstasy of all the pleasure that everybody had from the beginning of time until the end of time, one pill, it wouldn't add up to a karas ruach of olam haba, one exhaust fan experience of the next world. Not even the essential experience, but when you pass by a restaurant, the part they can't charge you for, that's blowing out the exhaust fan in the back, a delicious steak, that smells good, shawarma, they don't charge you for it, but that exhaust fan is not as good as the tasting itself. That doesn't add up to all the pleasure in this world doesn't come close to that. And yet one moment of tshuva and ma'asim tovim in this world, to be close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu and to do the right thing at that moment, and to feel the pleasure and the ton of doing the right thing. They said there was a Rebbe who was breaking into the ice with his son, this old Rebbe, and the sun broke through. You can imagine going to a cold pool. It's not so easy. Going into ice just to gain a little extra tahara. So the sun broke in first, and he jumped into the icy water. Ouch, 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 ooh, ouch, 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 ouch. And he came out with his beard filled with icicles. And the old father realized this is the teachable moment, and he wagged his finger and he told him, my son, he says, that's how it goes by mitzvahs. They start out ouch, 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 and they end up He says, and by averas, they start out and they end up ouch, ouch, ouch. So when a person does the right thing, they break through and they do the right thing. They take a moment of tshuva and ma'asim tovim. That's the beauty, that's the specialty of this world. And they're able to do something, to come close back to Kadosh Baruch Hu, to do something to connect them to Kadosh Baruch Hu. When Aaron does a mitzvah and he feels that he's coming close to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, then that's the greatest thing. That's the inner world. It doesn't need anything on the outside. It doesn't need any dressing. It doesn't have to be something he's doing that's even complicated. But the fact that he understands at that moment and he feels at that moment that he's experiencing the Kadosh Baruch Hu and he's doing with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, he's connecting with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, okay, then that makes it into something extraordinary. Right? Take away the ocean, what have you got? Take away the Kadosh Baruch Hu, what have you got, Rabbi? You're right, you've got nothing. Because you got nothing anyway if you take away Kadosh Baruch Hu. You include a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and then you have everything. One other thing I'll mention, I remember going, since we mentioned jumping into a cold mikveh, I remember going to the mikveh. There's things that block from the outside. I remember going to the mikveh Ari. The Gemara says that if somebody goes into the mikveh Ari, guaranteed to do tshuva. Right? Guaranteed not to leave this world without doing tshuva. Many times we took we took fellows, American college kids, we took them on trips, different places. It was appalling sometimes how irreverent a good American college kid can be. I remember one time having to defend to the rabbis. I remember the rabbis were defending to me. I was upset. We went to the West Bank, to the Gush Etzion place, to kibbutz, and they showed us a video with a map and a movie and a whole thing in a theater. We sat there about the war of 1948, and they had all these different movements and things on the map. And how these people, they showed that people thin like rails spent the next 5 years taking away rocks away from, before 1948, taking away the rocks, these survivors that were all skin and bones, and just to take them to make boundaries for their kibbutz and to make boundaries for their fields, just to clear rocks, the giant rocks that left. It was an untenable land. And just to make it, they begin to plow and to plant. They spent 5 years, these starving people, just to make it workable. And all of a sudden, they declared 1948, and 6 countries come to attack them. And they're describing this one coming from this side, and this one's going to saw them in half this way. And then they had some people, some Arabs came in, and they're watching this thing with terror and drama, and they put all the children and the women into a bunker that they were hiding, and they told this one fellow to throw his hand grenade into his own Jewish people and blow it up, and he refused, and they killed him, and then they threw it in. He says, and they killed and they killed them there on the spot. These people, the children, and that's how this fellow on the screen is describing a survivor himself. And now the screen goes up, and there they have the two behind there. It's right in the exact same spot where they have these two pits, these two bunkers where these people were killed, just for nothing, in the middle of that war. They survived, and the kibbutz grew up again, but that becomes the monument. And everybody was naturally drawn to that spot, and we stood there and just stared into that pit over there where Jews had lost their lives just because they were Jews. And then we got back on the bus, and we started on our trip to the north, and it didn't take 20 seconds before it's Flintstones, meet the Flintstones, and it just flipped into something silly. They couldn't take the heaviness of the moment, and they started being the most silly, ridiculous. And I was like, oh my, and one of the rabbis said, he says, what do you want? They're flipping channels all day long, and they're, flip, and they see the sublime and a destruction of the tornado over here, and then it's a comedian over here, and it's a joke over here. It's all litzanos. They don't see any. They're covered up with. They don't know what's real and what's not real, and what's important, what's unimportant, and they're used to just flipping and going from the sublime to the ridiculous. How can you blame them? So it calmed down a little bit, and I realized this is a tough, impenetrable crowd. We continued on our trip to the north, and I saw this a couple of times later on. Also, we went into the mikveh Ari. A few bunch of them, they were also singing their silly ditties on the way down to the mikveh. And then we went in. And on the way up, we were walking, and I can anticipate already now, after my first couple of experiences, the guy's walking up, and he says, Rabbi, what is it, Howard? He said, I prefer if you call me Chaim. Okay. Why are we here? I said, we came here. You want to spend Shabbos in Tzvat? He says, no. Why are we here in this world? And I see that just having jumped into that cold pool over there took away all the external klippas, all the distractions, all those years and years. Okay, it grows back, and a person can they can reawaken themselves. But I see in one moment of proper focus, the person opens up, and that's what the neshama is thirsty for. They start to drink in the moment. They say that the tzaddik of Yerushalayim, Rabbi Rabbi Label Lam, he was seen looking at a candle one time. Like Aaron Cohen lit the candle, and they asked him, he was studying the candle. They said, Rebbe, what's the Rebbe doing? He says, I'm drinking in the light. He's drinking light. That was a drink for him. It was just to look at the light and to watch it, that it's washing over his eyes. Same thing, Kadosh Baruch Hu is looking in the world. He's creating a new world right now. It's in the present tense. If you're the one that's doing it, not the one who's learning the Mishnah. If you're learning the Mishnah, so it doesn't sound like it's so exciting. But if you're the one that's saying that the Tehillim slowly, if you're the one that's davening and looking at the next word and anticipating what it is, imata osachein, if you're the one that's doing it, so that's when the Mishnah promises, Ashrecha v'tovlach, Ashrecha v'yolam hazeh, then you'll get the real taste, you'll get the flavor of happiness that is in this world, v'tovlach le'olam haba, and it'll be good for us, Bez Hashem, in the next world too. Okay.